It was a gray Sunday morning in early March 2023. The rain tapped lightly against the window, and the house was unusually silent. You stood in the attic surrounded by half-open boxes, remnants of a life that once felt too heavy to remember. Dust hung in the air like a quiet fog as you reached for the last wooden box tucked behind an old trunk. You weren't even sure why you kept it. Maybe it was the shape of the carved roses on the lid, or maybe it was because it was the only box you'd never opened since your mother's funeral 15 years ago. You sat down on the floor, legs folded beneath you, and brushed off the dust with your sleeve. The faint smell of cedar and perfume escaped when you lifted the lid. Inside were letters tied with faded ribbons, a dried white rose, a small photo of your mother holding 2 babies in her arms, and a delicate gold locket shaped like a heart. The chain was broken, the metal a little tarnished, but when the light hit it, it glimmered like it had been waiting for someone to notice. You smiled faintly. It looked familiar, though you couldn't recall ever wearing it. You held it closer, running your thumb across the engraved initials A and E. A small click, and it opened with ease. Inside was a miniature photo of 2 girls about 10 years old, their faces so similar they looked like reflections of one another. You blinked, confused. One of the girls was unmistakably you. A sudden voice broke the silence downstairs. "Mom, are you up there?" You jumped, nearly dropping the locket. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm just cleaning." Your daughter, Clara, appeared at the top of the stairs, her wet hair dripping from a recent shower, wearing your old college hoodie. She looked around at the mess of boxes and smiled. "Spring cleaning again? You always say you're going to throw things out and end up keeping everything." You laughed softly. Guilty. You held up the locket. "But look what I found. It's beautiful, isn't it?" Her smile vanished. Her eyes widened, pupils dilating as if she'd seen a ghost. "Mom, where did you get that?" You frowned. "This? It was in your grandma's old box. Why?" She stepped closer, staring so hard you could almost hear her heartbeat. Her voice came out trembling. "That's not possible." "What's not possible?" Her hand flew to her neck, searching for something under her sweatshirt. She pulled out a silver chain. Hanging from it was a locket, the exact same design. Identical carvings, identical initials, even the tiny dent near the hinge. "Clara," you whispered, a chill running through your body. "Why do you have that?" She shook her head, tears welling up. "Mom, this isn't yours. It's mine. I've had it since I was little. You told me it was lost." You felt dizzy. The attic seemed smaller, the air thicker. "No, honey, I've never seen yours before. I didn't even remember this one existed until today." Clara's breathing quickened. "That can't be true. Look at the photo inside." She snapped hers open. Inside was a single image of a young woman with gentle eyes and a scar on her chin. The same face from the picture in your locket. The girl beside your younger self. "Who is she?" Clara asked, voice barely audible. You couldn't answer. The past you'd buried so carefully came rushing back like floodwater breaking through a dam. The hospital, the crying, the night your mother told you something you weren't supposed to repeat. You forced a shaky smile. Maybe they just look similar. There were so many lockets like this back then. Clara's lips trembled. "No, Mom. Grandma told me once. She said you had a sister." You froze. The attic lights flickered. Somewhere outside, thunder grumbled. You tried to laugh it off. "That's ridiculous. I was an only child." But your hands betrayed you. They trembled so hard that the locket slipped and hit the floor with a metallic clink. "Mom, why are you shaking?" You swallowed hard, picking up the necklace. "It's just cold. I'm fine." But you weren't fine. You hadn't been fine since that summer in 1985, when you were 8 and your world split into 2 halves, the life you lived and the life you pretended never happened. Clara crouched beside you. "Tell me the truth, please." Her tone wasn't angry. It was desperate, pleading, almost frightened. And suddenly you realized she wasn't a child anymore. She was old enough to see through silence. You stood up slowly, locket clenched in your palm. "Go downstairs, Clara. I'll explain everything soon." "No, you always say that. You hide things." "I'm not hiding." "Yes, you are. You told me my father's accident was just bad luck, but Aunt May said there was more to it. You told me Grandma's letters were gone, but I found them last year in your drawer. And now this?" Her voice cracked on the last word, and you saw your mother's stubborn fire burning in her. You sighed, defeated. "All right," you whispered. "Sit down." She obeyed, crossing her legs like a child again. You sat beside her on the wooden floor, your hands trembling as you opened the locket once more. "This picture," you said quietly, "was taken when I was 10. The other girl, her name was Elise. She was my sister." Clara blinked, speechless. "You had a sister?" "Yes." Your throat tightened. "But she wasn't supposed to exist. At least that's what I was told after the fire." The memory hit like smoke in your lungs. You told Clara how you and Elise used to play in the garden, wearing matching dresses your mother sewed from the same fabric. You remembered your father's camera flashing as you both laughed under the apple tree. You remembered Elise's laugh light, musical, always echoing first. Then came the night of the storm, the thunder louder than tonight's, the lightning flashing through the cracked windows. You were asleep when the smell of smoke filled the room. Your mother screaming, the heat, the fear. You remembered being carried outside, rain pelting your face, and then nothing. When you woke up in the hospital, your father was gone, your house was gone, and they told you Elise didn't make it. "They said she was gone forever," you murmured, staring at the locket. "They told me never to talk about her again. Grandma said pretending would make it hurt less." Clara's voice was a whisper. "But why hide it from me?" "Because I didn't want you to carry the pain I did." She reached for your hand, but you pulled away, not ready for comfort. "I thought the locket burned with the house," you said. "But maybe Grandma kept it. Maybe she wanted me to find it when I was ready." Clara's eyes darted between the two lockets. "Then how do I have the same one? Mine came from the orphanage I used to volunteer at before college. They said it was left in a box of donations 20 years ago." The attic fell silent again. The clock ticked downstairs, loud as a heartbeat. You whispered, "The same orphanage where your father grew up." Her jaw dropped. "You mean—" "Yes." You didn't finish. The truth hung in the air, heavy and unfinished. You stood up, pacing in the narrow space. "This can't be a coincidence. 2 identical lockets. One from my past, one from your father's." "Mom!" "Let's go downstairs," you said, voice suddenly firm. "I need to check something." You went to the kitchen, pulled an old photo album from the shelf, and flipped through yellowed pages. There it was, a family portrait. You, Elise, your parents, and around Elise's neck, clear as day, the same locket. Clara leaned over your shoulder, gasping softly. "That's her, the same face, the same necklace." Her voice was trembling. "Mom, she looks exactly like me." You stared closer, comparing the shape of the nose, the curve of the jaw, the small scar on the chin identical. The room spun again. You grabbed the table for support. "It's not possible." But deep down, a whisper inside you said it was. Because in that moment you remembered something your mother said in the hospital, something you had buried so deep you thought it was a dream. "She's not gone," she had murmured weakly. "She's just hidden." Clara's hand touched your shoulder. "Mom, you're scaring me." You took a long breath, then forced a shaky smile. "Don't be scared. Maybe this is just an old family coincidence. I'll call the orphanage tomorrow. We'll find out where your necklace really came from." She didn't believe you. You could see it in her eyes. But she nodded anyway. You spent the rest of the evening cleaning in silence. The rain outside turned into a storm again, and every sound, the wind, the creak of the attic stairs, the rattle of the window made you flinch. When night came, you sat on your bed with both lockets open on your lap. 2 hearts, 2 halves. You whispered to yourself, "What if she's still out there?" And as if in answer, your phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. The text read, "Elise's locket was never lost. Stop searching." You dropped the phone, your hands ice cold. Down the hall, Clara's bedroom light was still on. You wanted to run to her, but something told you not to wake her yet, not until you understood who sent that message. You stared at the glowing screen, heart pounding in your chest, and whispered to the empty room, "After all these years, why now?" The storm outside grew louder, thunder rolling like an echo of the past refusing to stay buried, and as you closed your eyes, you swore you heard a faint sound, like a child's laughter drifting through the hallway, familiar, distant, and impossibly real. That night, sleep never came. The message, "Elise's locket was never lost. Stop searching," replayed in your mind like a broken record. You turned your phone off, but the words stayed, etched behind your eyelids. By morning, the storm had passed, but the unease hadn't. The house felt colder, emptier. Even the ticking clock seemed slower, as if time itself was holding its breath. You walked into the kitchen, poured coffee you didn't want, and stared at the 2 lockets lying on the table. They looked harmless, innocent even, but you knew they carried decades of silence and secrets. You picked up your phone again, hesitating before dialing the orphanage number Clara had mentioned. A cheerful voice answered, too bright for such an early hour. "Good morning, Maple Grove Orphanage. This is Nora speaking." You cleared your throat. "Hi, yes, this is Evelyn Hart. My daughter used to volunteer there a few years ago. I was wondering if you could check something for me. It's about an item that was donated a long time ago." "Of course," Nora said. "Do you know approximately when?" "I think around 20 years ago. A gold locket, heart-shaped with the initials A and E." There was a pause. "Oh, I think I remember hearing about that one," she said slowly. "We keep a small record of personal items that come in. Do you mind holding while I check?" You waited, your fingers tapping against the cup, heartbeat thudding in your ears. When Nora returned, her voice had changed. "Mrs. Hart. That locket was part of a sealed donation. It came with a note that said it belonged to a girl named Elise. But there's something strange. The note also mentioned a woman named Evelyn." You froze. "What did it say exactly?" Nora hesitated. "Just one line. Return this to Evelyn when she's ready." The words made your stomach drop. "Do you still have the note?" "Yes, but it's in storage. We keep older archives off-site, about 20 minutes away. If you'd like, I can arrange for you to come by today and see it." "Yes, please," you said quickly, "as soon as possible." After hanging up, you turned to find Clara standing in the doorway. Her eyes were red. She'd been awake all night, too. "Who were you talking to?" "The orphanage," you admitted. "They found something connected to the locket." She stepped closer, worry and curiosity mixing on her face. "Can I come?" You nodded. "You should." The drive there was quiet, except for the hum of the tires on wet asphalt. The gray sky made everything look washed out. The trees, the road, even your reflection in the window. You caught glimpses of Clara staring out, fiddling with her locket like it might disappear. When you reached the old brick building, its paint chipped and sign faded, you were greeted by a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and curly hair. "You must be Mrs. Hart," she said. "And this is your daughter? I'm Nora." She led you down a long hallway that smelled faintly of dust and lemon cleaner. At the end was a small room lined with metal cabinets and old file boxes. Nora pulled one labeled 1999-2005 and started flipping through folders until she stopped. "Here it is," she said, sliding out a thin envelope. "We don't open sealed donations, but this one was already labeled Personal Item Safe to Archive." She handed it to you. The envelope was yellowed, edges fragile. Your name. Evelyn was written across the front in handwriting you hadn't seen in decades. Your mother's. Your knees went weak. Clara steadied you. Mom? You carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a single page, folded twice. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. If this ever reaches you, my dear Evelyn, it means the truth has found its way home. Elise isn't gone. I had to protect her from the man who called himself your father. One day you'll understand. The lockets will lead you back to her. Trust no one. Your breath caught. Protect her? From Dad? Clara looked terrified. Grandpa, what does that mean? You didn't answer right away. The memories you'd buried started clawing their way back. Your father's shouting, your mother's hurried whispers, the night of the fire. The way your mother's hands trembled when she carried you outside. You remembered her saying, "Don't look back," again and again. You sank into a chair. She lied to everyone, you whispered, even to me. Nora's voice was gentle. Mrs. Hart, are you all right? You nodded faintly. Do you have any adoption records from around that time? Maybe a girl named Elise? Nora hesitated. Most of our older records were transferred to the state years ago, but I can check the partial list we keep. She flipped through another binder. Here. Yes, there was a child brought here in 1985 right after a house fire. Name, Elise Carter. Age, 7. No known relatives. You stared at the paper, your mouth dry. Carter was my mother's maiden name, you whispered. Clara gasped. Mom, she's real. She survived. Nora frowned. According to the file, she was adopted 2 years later by a couple named Sullivan. They moved out of state Illinois, I think. You stood up too fast, the chair scraping behind you. Can I get a copy of that record? I'm afraid not, Nora said softly. They're sealed by law, but I can give you the case number if you want to request it formally. Please. You scribbled down the number like it was a lifeline. On the drive home, Clara kept staring at you. So she's alive. All this time. You shook your head. If that record is correct, yes. But I don't understand why no one told me. Why would Grandma lie? Clara's voice softened. Maybe she thought she was protecting you. You sighed. Or protecting him. The rest of the drive passed in silence, broken only when your phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. You ignored it, but when it buzzed again, you finally looked. This time the message read, Stop digging, Evelyn. You don't want to wake ghosts. You nearly swerved off the road. Clara noticed. What happened? Nothing. You said too quickly. Just spam. But your hand wouldn't stop shaking. That night, Clara insisted you rest, but sleep was impossible again. You kept replaying your mother's words, protect her from the man who called himself your father. You couldn't believe it. Your father had been strict, yes, but violent? Secretive? Capable of something like that? You opened the old family photo album again, staring at his smiling face. Then you noticed something you'd never paid attention to before. In one picture, your father stood behind your mother and Elise, his hand on Elise's shoulder, not yours. And Elise looked uncomfortable, her smile forced. The next photo, taken just weeks later, showed only you and your parents. Elise was gone. Your chest tightened. You flipped the page again, but half the photos were missing, torn out. You turned to the back where your mother had written short notes in neat handwriting. Most said things like Christmas 1984 or summer picnic. But under one photo in hurried pen was written, Last day before the fire. A soft knock startled you. Clara peeked in, holding her phone. Mom, there's something you need to see. She sat beside you and opened a video. One of the orphanage staff posted old photos on their social page years ago. Look. The screen showed a group of children posing for Christmas at the orphanage. And there, in the middle, was a little girl with the same eyes, same smile, and the same gold locket. The caption read, "Elise Sullivan, age 9. Clara whispered, "She really did survive." Tears blurred your vision. "My sister." You felt something shift inside you. Grief, shock, and a fragile hope you hadn't felt in decades. But then Clara paused the video. "Wait, look behind her." In the corner stood a man. His face was partly shadowed, but you recognized the profile instantly. Broad shoulders, gray hair, the familiar tilt of his head. It was your father. "No," you whispered. "It can't be." Clara looked at you in disbelief. "Grandpa was there? How? The file said he wasn't listed anywhere." Your heart pounded. He must have found her. Maybe he was the one who left her there. The weight of realization made you dizzy. He lied to everyone. He made us think she was dead. He separated us. You couldn't breathe. You stood up, pacing. And Mom covered it up. That's why she told me to forget. That's why she kept the locket. Clara's eyes filled with tears. What kind of man does that? The kind who hides behind being a father, you whispered. Outside, the wind howled again. You sat on the edge of the bed, the lockets resting in your palms. 2 identical hearts, one story finally breaking open. Clara wiped her eyes. "We need to find her, Mom. We have to." You looked up slowly. "We will, but whoever's been sending those messages, someone doesn't want us to." You both sat there in the dim light, the glow of the phone reflecting in your eyes, and in that quiet you made a promise to find Elise, no matter who tried to stop you. You didn't yet know how dangerous that promise would become. You woke up before dawn, long before the first light touched the curtains. The sky outside was still black, heavy with mist. For a few seconds, you forgot why your chest felt tight. Then you saw the 2 lockets on your nightstand and remembered everything. The phone buzzed again, breaking the silence. Another unknown number. You hesitated before opening the message. "You can't bring her back. Stop before someone gets hurt." You froze, fingers trembling over the screen. The words felt personal this time, not like a prank. Someone knew what you were doing and wanted to scare you off. Down the hall, you heard Clara moving around. You didn't want her to see the message, not yet. You deleted it, took a deep breath, and went to make coffee. But the smell of brewing beans couldn't wash away the unease that clung to you. Every sound in the house felt sharper. The hum of the refrigerator, the drip of the faucet, the creak of the floorboards under your feet. When Clara entered the kitchen, she already had her laptop under her arm. Her eyes were puffy from lack of sleep, but determination burned in them. "I was thinking," she said, sitting down, "we can track Elise through the Sullivan family. If she was adopted, there should be some trace news, social media, anything." You wanted to tell her not to get her hopes up, but you couldn't, because deep down, a part of you believed it too. "Okay," you said quietly. "Let's start." For the next few hours, you both scrolled through names, addresses, and old records. Dozens of Sullivans popped up, but none matched the timeline. Then Clara froze. "Wait, look at this." She turned the screen toward you. It was a charity article from a small Illinois newspaper dated 2 years ago. Local woman donates to rebuild orphanage she once called home. The photo showed a woman around your age, with soft eyes and a familiar smile. Her name, Elise Sullivan Rowe. Your breath caught. "That's her," you whispered. The resemblance was undeniable. The same hair color, the same scar on her chin. Even the necklace, though barely visible, was unmistakable. Clara grinned through tears. "Mom, she's alive. We found her." But your relief was short-lived. Beneath the photo was a line that made your heart stop. In honor of her late parents, Richard and Margaret Rowe, and her sister Evelyn, who she lost in a fire decades ago. You felt the room spin. "She thinks I'm dead," you said softly. Clara's smile faded. "Oh my God. She doesn't know I survived. All these years." You slumped into your chair, tears blurring your vision. All the guilt you had carried for years twisted into something new. grief for a sister who'd lived her whole life believing you were gone. Clara squeezed your hand. Then we'll show her you're alive. You shook your head. It's not that simple. If someone's sending those messages, they don't want me finding her, and I think I know who it is. Clara frowned. Who? Your father's brother, Uncle Peter. He handled all of Grandma's estate paperwork after she died. He was the one who packed her belongings, including that box in the attic. He must have known the locket was there. Clara's eyebrows furrowed. Why would he care? Because Peter never forgave my mother for cutting contact with my father. He always said family secrets were best left buried. If he finds out we're digging... You didn't finish the sentence. You didn't need to. Clara straightened. Then we go around him. You said Elise lives in Illinois, right? Let's drive there. Now? Why wait? The longer we sit here, the more chances they have to stop us. You wanted to argue, but looking at her, you saw the same fire your sister used to have. You nodded slowly. All right. Pack light. We leave in an hour. By mid-morning, you were on the highway, the car packed with a small bag, your phone charger, and both lockets in your pocket. The miles stretched endlessly ahead, and the hum of the tires became a rhythm that lulled you into memories you wished you'd forgotten. You remembered Elise's laughter, her fear of thunder, the way she always hid behind you during storms. Clara broke the silence. What do you think she's like now? You smiled faintly. Probably stronger than both of us. The drive took 8 hours. The closer you got to the small Illinois town, the heavier your chest felt. Every mile marker made the past more real. You finally pulled into a quiet street lined with maple trees, the kind that turned golden in autumn. At the end stood a white-painted house with blue shutters. A mailbox read, E. Rowe. Clara parked a few houses away. That's her place, she said quietly. You couldn't move. Your hands gripped the door handle, but your legs refused to cooperate. Mom? You swallowed hard. Just give me a minute. For 37 years, you'd imagined this moment seeing Elise again, explaining everything. But now, your heart was pounding so fast you thought it might burst. What if she didn't believe you? What if she hated you for not finding her sooner? Finally, you stepped out of the car. The afternoon sun warmed your face as you walked toward the gate. You rang the bell once, twice. Footsteps. Then the door opened. The woman standing there looked exactly like the photo, but older, gentler. Her eyes widened as she saw you. Can I help you? She asked. Her voice, soft, steady, was the same as in your childhood memories. You tried to speak, but your throat tightened. Elise. She froze. How do you know that name? You took a shaky breath and reached into your coat pocket. You held up the locket. Because you had the other half. Her face drained of color. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she opened the door wider, her hand trembling. Come inside. The living room smelled faintly of vanilla and old books. Family photos lined the walls, her husband, her grown children. Everything felt warm, safe, real. She motioned for you to sit, but neither of you did. You stood there, face to face, hearts racing. Elise, you whispered. It's me, Evelyn. She covered her mouth, tears spilling instantly. No, that's not possible. You died, they told me. They lied, you said gently. I was taken away. Mom said it was the only way to protect me. She shook her head, backing up. Protect you? From what? From him? You nodded. She turned away, pressing a hand to her forehead. I thought maybe I dreamed you. Every year on your birthday, I'd feel like I forgot something important. Like someone was missing from my photos, from my memories. You stepped closer. I never stopped thinking about you. She finally turned back, eyes full of disbelief and longing. Let me see your locket. You handed it to her. She opened hers too. The two halves fit perfectly, the hinges aligning like they'd never been apart. A sob escaped her lips. It's really you, You hugged her, the kind of hug that collapses decades of distance. For the first time in years, your heart felt whole. Clara watched from the doorway, wiping her eyes. You found her, Mom. Elise looked at her, smiling through tears. You must be Clara. You look just like she did when we were young. You all sat down, laughter mixing with tears as you tried to piece together what happened after the fire. Elise told you how a man had driven her to the orphanage, saying her family had perished. He never gave his name, only left a small donation and vanished. You knew instantly who it was. Dad, you whispered. Elise nodded. I always thought he looked familiar when I was older, like I'd seen him before. Sometimes I'd spot him at a distance, watching. I thought I was imagining things. Your stomach turned. He kept track of you. But why? Clara asked. Because, you said bitterly, he wanted control. Even after everything, he wanted to decide who we were allowed to be. Elise reached for your hand. Mom tried to protect us. She told him she'd take you and disappear. He found me first. The pieces finally fit together. The fire, the separation, the silence, all of it rooted in one man's obsession with control. Elise looked down. When I was adopted, I took my new parents' name. I built a life. I thought about looking for you, but I didn't want to relive the pain. I understand, you whispered. She smiled sadly. I'm just glad you found me before it was too late. For a while, you talked about everything, your mother's kindness, the songs you used to sing, the matching dresses. It felt surreal, like stepping into a dream you never wanted to end. Then Elise's phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen and frowned. That's strange. Unknown number. Before you could stop her, she answered. A male voice came through, cold, deliberate. I told you to stop, Evelyn. Elise froze. Who is this? The line went dead. Clara's face paled. How did they know where we were? You looked out the window, half expecting to see someone watching from the street. Nothing. Just quiet trees swaying in the wind. We're being followed, you said softly. Peter must have found out. Elise frowned. Who's Peter? Dad's brother, you said. He's been trying to bury this secret for years. Maybe he was part of it. Elise's hand tightened around yours. Then we go to the police. You shook your head. Not yet. We need proof first. She hesitated, then nodded. I still have a box from the orphanage letters, documents. Maybe there's something in there that explains everything. Clara stood up. Then let's find it. You spent the next hour in Elise's attic, the air thick with dust and old memories, boxes labeled, photos, papers on school years. Finally, Elise found one marked personal, 1985. Inside were crumbling envelopes and a smaller box sealed with tape. When you opened it, a faint smell of smoke escaped. Inside were newspaper clippings, photos, and a letter written in the same handwriting as the one from the orphanage. The letter began, If this ever reaches you both, know that the truth will hurt before it heals. Richard was never your real father. The room went silent. Elise looked at you, her lips trembling. What? You read aloud. He found me when I was already pregnant. He promised safety, but when Elise was born, he grew jealous. He thought she wasn't his. The fire was his doing. I only managed to save one of you. You dropped the paper. Your whole body went cold. Clara's voice broke. So Grandpa started the fire? You nodded numbly, and Mom took the blame to protect us. Elise covered her face, sobbing. All this time, I blamed her. I thought she abandoned me. You hugged her tightly. She saved us, both of us. Outside, a car door slammed. You looked out the window and saw a black sedan idling by the curb. A figure stood beside it, phone in hand. Peter. Clara's whisper trembled. Mom, he's here. Your heart raced. Lock the door. Don't open it. But before you could move, the phone buzzed again. A text flashed on the screen. "You've gone too far, Evelyn. Some secrets are meant to burn." The same words your father once said before the fire. You looked at Elise. He's finishing what his brother started. You grabbed your bag, stuffed the letters inside, and pulled Clara toward the back door. Elise followed, clutching her locket. As you fled into the backyard, rain began to fall again, as if the past had found its way back to you, and for the first time, you weren't running from it. You were running toward the truth. The rain came down hard, cold needles against your skin as you ran through Elise's backyard. The grass was slippery, the sky black and endless. You didn't dare look back, but you could feel him there. Peter's presence, heavy and real. Behind you, Clara's voice cut through the storm. "Mom, this way!" You followed her to the side gate. Elise fumbled with the latch, hands shaking, finally pushing it open. You all stumbled out into the narrow alley, breathless. The sedan's headlights swept across the yard, illuminating the wet grass where you'd stood seconds before. "Get in the car," you gasped. You dove into your vehicle, water dripping from your hair, and slammed the doors shut. The engine roared to life just as Peter's car turned onto the street. For a terrifying moment, you locked eyes through the rain-streaked windshield. His expression was cold, unreadable. Then his headlights flashed twice. "Mom, he's following us," Clara shouted. "I see him." You pressed harder on the gas, your heart pounding. "Hold on." The tires screeched as you sped through the intersection. The wipers thrashed wildly, barely keeping the windshield clear. The streets blurred into streaks of gray and yellow. Elise clutched the dashboard. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe," you said. But the truth was, you had no idea. For miles, you drove without speaking until the lights of the town disappeared behind you. The rain eased into mist, and you turned onto an old road you vaguely remembered from your youth. The sign read, Maple Creek Storage. You pulled over behind a row of rusted containers, heart hammering. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and rust. "We'll wait here," you whispered. "He won't find us right away." Elise's voice shook. "Evelyn, he wants the letters. The truth about Richard. That's what this is about." You nodded. "If these letters get out, it ruins everything he's built. The trust funds, the estates, everything that came from my father's will." Clara turned in her seat, eyes wide. "So he's trying to protect his inheritance?" You clenched your fists. "And his brother's reputation. He doesn't care who he hurts to do it." Thunder rolled in the distance again. The storm wasn't finished. Elise touched your arm gently. You realize, if he's come this far, he won't stop. You looked at her and saw the same fear that had lived in you for decades, the fear of being powerless. But this time, something had changed. You opened your bag and took out the letters. The paper was fragile, the ink faded, but inside those words was the power to destroy every lie he'd built. "Then we don't hide anymore," you said. "We fight back. By sunrise, you'd made a plan. Elise still had contacts at the local paper, the same one that had published her charity photo. If anyone could help you prove the story, it was there." "We can meet the editor," Elise said. "Her name's Grace. She's honest, and she won't let this go ignored." You drove to town while the world was still waking up, the streets glistening from the rain. Every car that passed made you flinch. Every reflection felt like someone watching. The newsroom was small, tucked between a bakery and a barber shop. Grace turned out to be a tall woman in her 50s, with short gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at the letters in silence, then at the three of you. "This is heavy stuff," she said finally. "If what you're saying is true, this isn't just family history, it's potential criminal cover-up." You nodded. "We're ready to go public, but Peter knows we have the evidence. He's not going to let us walk away quietly." Grace folded her hands. "Then you'll stay here until we make copies of everything. I'll contact the police once I've verified the documents." Relief washed over you. For the first time since the attic, you felt like maybe you were safe. Clara exhaled, leaning against the wall. "Thank God." But Elise was staring out the window, frowning. "Mom," she whispered, "his car." You turned. Parked across the street was the same black sedan. Before Grace could react, the front door burst open. Peter stood there, soaked from the rain, his face twisted with something between rage and desperation. "Evelyn," he said evenly, "you shouldn't have come here." Grace stepped forward. "Sir, you need to leave." "Stay out of this," Peter snapped. He looked at you again. "You don't know what you're doing. That letter will destroy our family's name. Is that really what you want?" You rose slowly. "What family, Peter? The one built on lies?" He took a step closer, his voice lowering. "Your father made mistakes. We all did. But the past doesn't need to be rewritten." Clara's voice shook. "He tried to kill them." Peter's gaze flicked toward her. "You think you understand? You're just a child." "No," you said sharply. "She's the only one seeing things clearly." He reached into his coat pocket, and for a split second, fear shot through you. But he only pulled out an envelope. He threw it onto the table. "You want truth? There it is." Grace picked it up, eyes narrowing. Inside were old court documents, medical records, fire reports, statements from neighbors. "These are falsified," she said. "Half of this was edited." Peter's mask slipped for the first time. His voice cracked. "He wasn't evil, Evelyn. He loved you. He just lost control." "Lost control?" You repeated, your voice shaking. "He set a fire. He tore our family apart. And you helped him hide it." He looked at you with something like regret. "I tried to protect you from the truth. The truth didn't need protection. We did." Grace's voice was firm. "I'm calling the police." Peter turned sharply toward the door, but Clara was faster. She stood in front of him, blocking the exit. "You're not going anywhere." For a moment, the room felt suspended in time. Rain drummed on the windows. Thunder growled somewhere far off. Then Peter sighed, shoulders slumping. "You've already won," he said quietly. "You just don't know what it'll cost." He stepped back, hands raised. "You think this ends with me? There are others who don't want the truth out. Be careful what you wake up, Evelyn." Before anyone could stop him, he turned and walked into the rain. 2 hours later, the police had taken statements. Grace handed the digital copies of the letters to the authorities, keeping one backup on her computer. Peter's car was gone, but they issued a warrant for questioning. You sat in the break room, exhausted. Elise poured coffee into paper cups, her hands still shaking. Clara scrolled through her phone. "Mom," she said, "look." The local news site had already posted the story. Family secret hidden for decades. Sisters reunite after orphanage discovery. There was your photo beside Elise's, smiling weakly outside the newsroom. The caption read, "Evelyn and Elise Hart break silence after 37 years. Tears filled your eyes. "It's over," you whispered. But Grace shook her head. "It's only beginning. Once people start digging, more will come out. But you've done the right thing." Elise smiled faintly. "Maybe now Mom can finally rest in peace." You squeezed her hand. "She'd be proud of us." Clara looked up. "She already is." That evening, you all drove back to Elise's house. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air clean and cold. The sunset painted the clouds pink and gold colors you hadn't noticed in years. You helped Elise hang the 2 lockets on the wall, side by side, inside a glass frame. The inscription below read, "Two hearts, one story." As you stared at them, memories came rushing back. The laughter, the garden, the smell of apple blossoms. You realized that even through all the loss, something beautiful had survived. Your connection. Clara broke the silence. "You know, Grandma's note said the lockets would lead you back to her. She was right." You smiled through tears. "She always was." Elise laughed softly. "Do you remember when she used to hide cookies behind the flour jar so Dad wouldn't find them?" You laughed too. He always did, though. He could smell sugar from a mile away. The 3 of you laughed, until the sound filled the whole room, washing away years of pain. Then the phone rang. You exchanged uneasy glances. Elise answered. "Hello?" A calm male voice replied, "Mrs. Rowe, this is Detective Mason. We found Peter's car near the river." Your stomach dropped. "Is he—" "He's gone," Mason said gently. "We believe he jumped sometime early this afternoon. We're still investigating." The room fell silent. Elise covered her mouth, whispering a prayer. You sat down slowly. You didn't know how to feel relieved, sad, or simply empty. The man who tried to bury the truth had carried it to his grave. Clara knelt beside you. "It's over, Mom. Really over." You looked at her, then at Elise, and realized she was right. The story had finally ended, not with revenge, but with peace. Weeks later, the headlines faded. The investigation confirmed everything in your mother's letters. The truth about Richard Hart's fire, the orphanage cover-up, and Peter's role in hiding Elise's survival. It all became public record. You and Elise spoke at the orphanage fundraiser that year, standing side by side. The crowd applauded as you finished your speech. "This locket," you said, holding it up for everyone to see, "was once a symbol of loss. Now it's a reminder that love, no matter how buried, always finds its way home." The audience rose to their feet, clapping, some wiping tears. Clara filmed the moment, smiling through her own. Afterward, as you stood under the evening sky, Elise squeezed your hand. "You know, I used to dream of you standing beside me like this. Every time I looked in the mirror, I saw half of myself missing. Now I finally see the whole picture." You smiled. "We both do." The air was quiet, peaceful. For once there was no thunder in the distance, only the faint sound of laughter, real and alive. As the lights dimmed and the crowd dispersed, you turned to Clara. "Promise me something," you said. "Anything." "Never bury pain in silence. It always finds its way back." She nodded solemnly. "I promise." You hugged her tightly, breathing in the scent of rain and lilac from her hair. That night, as you lay in bed at Elise's house, you looked at the framed lockets on the wall. They glimmered faintly in the moonlight, two halves reflecting each other. The past was finally at rest. You whispered, "Thank you, Mom. We found her." Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, soft, almost like a sigh of relief. And in the quiet of that small room, after decades of lies and loss, your family was whole again.